This is 4.2, lesson 1. So remember with these videos, if you need to pause or rewind to make sure you understand and can write down everything, please feel free to do so. So for this lesson, we are going to be finding, or I can find, a trend line from a scatter plot. Now, if you remember from yesterday's lesson, we defined a trend line as showing an association more clearly. So it's showing that positive or negative relationship a little bit more clearly. So this line that we draw should go in the same direction as the points. We want to try and hit as many points as we can, but it's okay if it doesn't hit any. We want to try and get about half of the stray marks on each side of the line. And everyone may have a different trend line, and that's okay. They aren't all going to be exactly the same as long as they're close. So let's look at these graphs. So the first one here, we're drawing a trend line. Okay, so whenever we draw a trend line, first of all, you're going to need to use a ruler because we do need to have a straight line. So when we're drawing our trend line, we don't want to draw something going in this direction because that's not the same direction as our points. Okay, so our points are going downward, so we want to make sure our line goes downward. We also want to make sure we try and get half the points on either side. So if I put my line down here, it is too low. If I put my line all the way up here, it is too high. We also don't want to have an angle to where this is not angled enough. It doesn't quite match my points. And then this is too angled. Okay, so we want to try and go at the same angle as our points. Get about half above, half below. So if we go somewhere, different color here, maybe about right here, might be about good. We're going to draw our trend line all the way through. Okay, now our next step is to write an equation for this trend line. Okay, so what I want you to pay attention to is we are writing the equation for the line. I don't care about any of these points on my scatter plot anymore. Okay, all I care about is my line. So whenever we write an equation for a line, the first thing we want to do is find our slope, which means I need to find two good points. Okay, and these two good points do not have to be points that are originally drawn for the scatter plot. Okay, so for me, I see that this right here is a good point, and this is a good point. Now, it's nice when they hit corners like mine just did. Try and get them close to being on a corner. You're not always going to get nice, pretty numbers with these scatter plots. Okay, so don't be too concerned if you get a weird fraction or a weird backup. It's okay. So we have our 2 points, and now you have 2 options for finding the slope of these points. We could put these points into a table to where my first point is 214 and my second point is 810. And then we can find the change in y and the change in x. Okay, so my change in y in my table is -4. We can also do rise over run. I know I go down 4. Let me see how those match up. And then we have our change in x. Okay, so in our table, our change in x is +6. We can also see in our graph we go right 6, so that would also be a +6. So far, our slope is -4 over 6, but that can be simplified. So we always want to try and simplify our fractions. This is going to simplify to -2/3. Now, -2/3 is a repeating decimal. Don't put a repeating decimal in your equation. We've talked about this. Just leave it as the fraction. So far in our equation, we have y equals -2/3 x. Now our next step is to find our backup. And usually from a graph to find our backup, we would go to our y-intercept. But in this case, it is not clear what exactly our y-intercept is. So we need to create, well, most of you like to create the XMBY table to find our backup. Okay, and we are going to use an X and Y from our table right here, or an ordered pair that is on the line. Okay, so I'm going to use 2 and 14. Our M we found is -2/3. So when I do -2/3 times 2, I get -1 2/3. Again, don't write this as a repeating decimal. It's going to be hard for you to figure out your change. So to get from -1 2/3 to 14, we add 15 2/3. So that is going to be our backup. Again, that would have been really hard to see in this graph up here, because it would have been this point, but you would not have known that was exactly 15 2/3 based on your slope. Okay, so let's go to our second one here. Talking about the relationship of solo and assisted tackles. Okay, so the first thing again that we need to do is draw our trend line. We want to go in the same direction as our points. We want about half above, half below. So let's see here, if we get somewhere about maybe like right in there, looks about half. Oh, I just moved it. Okay, so here's my trend line. Now again, we're writing our equation, so the first thing we need to do is identify 2 good points. This one, I'll say it's about on there. It's pretty close. This one is a really good one, so we'll use this one as well. Okay, so again, we need to find the slope of these 2 points. So you can make a table, an XY table, with our ordered pairs 25, 6, and 40, 12. Okay, and we need to find our change in Y. Our change in Y is going to be +6, or you could have done rise over run, +6. And our change in X is going to be +15, or you would have seen that we would have gone right, which is a +15. So this gives us 6 over 15, I'm sorry, 6 over 15. Again, this can be simplified because they're both divisible by 3. So this gives me 2/5. This one is a perfect decimal, so if you wanted to use the decimal, you could. So far our equation is Y equals 2/5 X. But again, looking at this graph, we cannot tell our Y-intercept. Okay, so we need to, if you like to make a table, you can if you want to plug in an X and figure out how much you need to move to find your Y. Whatever you like to do. Again, I'm going to use a point from my table, so 25, 6, and my M is 2/5. So 25 times 2/5 is 10, and to get from 10 to 6, I know I have to subtract 4. So our backup, or our Y-intercept, is -4. Okay, then we have our last one down here, finishing the race. So again, we're drawing a trend line. So we want about half our points above, half below. Let's see here. That's probably about good right there. Oh, actually, probably pull it up just a little bit more. Maybe about right there. That's probably better. Okay, so let's see here. Let's try and find some good points. It looks like 245 is a good point. It looks like 820 is a really good point. So guys, try and get them as close as possible. I know this one's close right here, but this one up here was even closer to the corner of that box. Okay, so let's make our table. And our points were 245 and 820. So we want to find our change in Y. So our change in Y is going to be minus 25. You can also see that on our graph because we go down 25. And then our change in X is +6. So again, make sure you're paying attention if you're doing rise over run to your scales. so plus 6. Okay, so that gives us a negative 25 over 6. That does not reduce, but if you want to write it as a mixed number, it is negative 4 and 1/6. So far for our equation, we have y equals negative 4 and 1/6 x. Okay, so now when you find our y-intercept, again, it's not clear exactly on our graph what our y-intercept is. So I'm going to make a table. Okay, using my first ordered pair 2, 45. And my m is negative 4 and 1/6. So when I do 2 times negative 4 and 1/6, I get negative 8 and 1/3. Like I told you all, it's not always going to be pretty. To find how we get from negative 8 and 1/3 to 45, you could do 45 minus negative 8 and 1/3. And that's going to give you, 53 and 1/3.